There's really no magic secret to it. It's not like there's some formula which tells you if you're going to do this problem, then that problem, then the other problem, you'll magically achieve success.
So I'm planning to go back and finish my degree now. My PhD. I was on leave of absence, and as my mother keeps reminding me.
You know, it's amazing when the business people take over how rational they get, focus on short-term revenue and lose the long-term vision. That's a good place to take off on a different point. Most companies end up in failure, and I'm not talking about just the startups, but if you look at the S&P 500, so many of the very large companies keep going out of business at an increasing rate. People are surprised. What do companies need to do, whether they're small or large, to address these challenges? I mean, how do they take a different path, and how is Google taking a different path?
It's a great question. I mean, Einstein was revered, I would say, so there's definitely one example, and probably Newton before that. But definitely not as much so. I couldn't rattle off, 100 scientists that everybody would know who they are. I guess Stephen Hawking is also revered today in terms of living scientists. But it definitely takes, time and effort to appreciate the work. Watching a 2-hour movie is pretty easy, and then you say, oh, there's the movie star. And, you're probably going to have to spend, at least a couple months learning about some subject to appreciate new work. But I think it's well worthwhile, and I think we can add to people's interest to go ahead and do that through events such as the Breakthrough Class.
I think the age is a real issue. I mean, it's certainly a handicap in the sense of being able to manage people and to hire people and all these kinds of things. Maybe more so than it should be. And certainly, I think, the things that I'm missing are more things that you acquire with time. Like if you manage people for 20 years or something like that, you pick up things.
Well, I do think when I talk to most companies, I do think like their leaders are pretty short-term focused. And I was giving people the question, like, imagine you're running Exxon. What do? So you want to do something good. This is one of the most valuable company on earth. A lot of people think probably it's not doing good things, like worried about the environment and so on. But the company has a lot of capabilities. Has worldwide operations, manufacturing, government relations. Probably could do a lot of different things. If you took a 20-year view. If you took a 4-year view, it's a pretty hard question to answer. What do you do in the next 4 years? Which I think is about the average tenure of a Fortune 500 CEO. So if you're being measured quarterly, obviously it's good to have some pressure, so you actually do things and make money and improve things. But I think the 4-year kind of horizon for the leaders is pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to solve big problems in 4 years. I think it's probably pretty easy to do it in 20 years. So I think our whole system is kind of set up in a way that makes it difficult for leaders of really big companies. Eventually what you're doing kind of doesn't make sense over time, for whatever reasons, environmental, social, or whatever it is. And I think companies have a big problem making a big transition until they get replaced.
So certainly lack experience there, and that's an issue. But I sort of make up for that, I think, in terms of understanding where things are going to go, having vision about the future, and really understanding, the industry I'm in and what the company does, and also sort of the unique position of starting a company and working on it for 3 years before starting the company, and working on it pretty hard. So, whatever, 24 hours a day, and so I understand a lot of the aspects pretty well. So it's kind of I guess that compensates a little bit for lack of skills in other areas.
There's one minor thing I realized before I go back, and it's been my experience now from being at a company that has grown and is viewed differently in the world than it was when we were a smaller company. People don't really like big companies.
But we found they did have listings for fax machines, and back then there was the internet fax service. I can't remember exactly what it was called or how it worked, but there's this trick with DNS, and you would sort of route the digits of the number, and magically that fax would show up there. So we went ahead with the first test, and we decided we would order ourselves a pizza, and we fired up the web server, checked off the boxes with the toppings. I'd manually entered the menu before, hit OK, that fired off the script. It sent it to this internet fax service. Presumably that got delivered to the restaurant, and then we waited and got hungrier and hungrier. After a couple hours, I broke down and I called the pizza place, said, I faxed you an order.
I think in terms of being remembered, I think I want to make the world a better place. I think that's a pretty generic answer, but in several ways. One is through Google, the company, and in terms of giving people access to information. And, I'm sure I'll do other endeavors too. And I pondered how to address that issue, because, you don't want to be disliked. And I think the real issue is not is it unfair that people kind of expect so much out of big companies and watch them so closely and so forth. The question is, what is the company really doing with all of its vast resources to make the world better, to actually do positive things in the world? And I think then people won't be focused on digging deep into particular, what are the results for this particular query?
Are you going to deliver it? And then the guy said, let me go check the fax machine. And it was then that I realized that this just wouldn't work because the restaurants that even had faxes wouldn't look at them. And therefore that idea failed. And then I went on to work with Larry on data mining, and then sort of the link structure of the web, and eventually Google was born.
In our case, for example, people say, oh, this search result, we don't like result number 3 in this search, and that can get a lot of attention. I think that a company like Google with resources financially, not that big compared to many other companies, but nice technical resources, a lot of distribution, a lot of users, things like that. I think we have the potential to make very big differences, very big positive differences in the world. And I think we also have an obligation as a consequence of that. One thing we started last summer, about a year ago, was the Google Grants program, which gives advertising credit on our network to nonprofits. And that's now grown close to 300 charities.